Hi everyone, my name is Miran with the Manitoba YBN. Today we have Brett McGregor with us, who is the president-elect of the IBAM Board, joining us on this interview to give some advice to young brokers and give us a bit of info on his career path. So look forward to speaking with you, Brent. Starting off here, I guess I'd love to ask tell us a bit about yourself outside of the office. Where did you grow up? What do you enjoy doing outside of work?
Yeah, so I grew up in Wawanesa, so that's also the answer to how I got involved in the industry is I always joke that if you've lived in Wawanesa, you've probably worked in insurance at one point or another. So still live in Wawanesa. I've got my wife and our 3 kids there, so 2 boys and a girl. Involved in coaching hockey. I play curling myself. We've got a cabin at the lake that we spend a lot of time at. So yeah, basically kids and sports and lake outside of work are the main things.
Awesome. That's good. Leads me to my next question. So I wanted to ask you, how you manage work-life balance, because, obviously, like I mentioned, you're the president-elect on the IBAM board, which I know is quite a bit of work. But beyond that, you're the president of Guild Insurance. And you mentioned yourself, 3 kids, coach, and a whole other side of your life. So how do you kind of manage your time when it comes to all those?
Yeah, that's a challenge. And I wouldn't say that I've got it perfectly figured out. So if you get somebody that gives a good answer in these interviews, then let me know. But yeah, we do struggle with work-life balance. We put a lot of time into the business. We put time into volunteering, things like the IBAM board and involvement in our community, and then our family. So we think all those things are important, and we definitely struggle at times to figure out where to prioritize time. And I don't think we always get it right. So, but as much as possible, trying to disconnect and having some time that is separated from the office. You've got your email on your phone, you've got people calling, your cell phone, texting. So that's difficult. You have to actually put the phone away, put the phone in a different room. That's one of the biggest things that I am finding. And then try to manage stress levels is the other thing, because it's fine if you're spending time with your family, but if you are stressed out and you're not very nice to be around sometimes. So try to be pretty consistent with things like exercise. I'm doing more work with meditation lately to try out that. So those are some of the things I try, but like I say, I definitely don't have the perfect answer for that one.
Always an uphill battle with that.
Yeah.
So, we mentioned now being part of the IBAM board and volunteering is important to you, but how did you originally get involved with the IBAM board?
Yeah, so I was originally became involved as part of the Young Broker Committee. So when I first got into the broker side of the business at Guild, Neil Andrews was our CEO at the time, and he was in the executive positions of the IBAM board. So it was something that he believed strongly in and really instilled that in me, that service to the industry was important. So he was very encouraging when I wanted to sign up for Young Broker Committee, even though it wasn't that convenient for the business. The meetings were in Winnipeg. It's a 2-hour drive, but that was never an issue. So I was lucky to be in a business that recognized the importance and supported that, and gave me as much time as I needed for that. So yeah, I was on the Young Broker Committee for a number of years. I can't even remember off the top of my head how many years it was, but was on the committee, then worked through the co-chair, chair positions. So it was a really good experience. It was a really good way to get introduced to IBAM, to get some practice with things like public speaking at convention, to start to make some relationships that continue to this day. Those Young Broker Committee friendships are people that I continue to lean on now, right? So so that was my introduction to IBAM. Then there was a few year gap between Young Broker Committee and then when I joined the board. Yeah, I had the opportunity to join and just really wanted to continue to be involved and to give back. So have been on the board for a number of years now and moving through the chairs now. So I'll take over as president in April here, and then have a year as president and a year as chair, and then cycle off of the board. So, but I'm really proud of a lot of the work that we've done at the board level. There's been a lot of work done on things like governance, things like the MPI negotiation. The staff in the office are just so incredible. So being part of building that team at the top level with hiring Grant and then watching him develop that office and develop our talent has been really rewarding. So I think that's that's the gist of how I got involved with the board.
Awesome. You take over the president role same time I do the chair role. We'll be like Batman and Robin.
Yeah, awesome. Well, congratulations.
Oh, thank you. And no, it's awesome to hear that you had that support behind you, especially when you started off. And by all means, hey, if you have any candidates that could potentially be on our YBN, we really would love some rural representation.
For sure.
So that'd be awesome.
Yeah, we have had people in the past, but it's been a few years since I think Chelsea Cracknell was the last one that was part of it from our organization. So yeah, that's something that I'll keep in mind for sure.
Awesome. So when it comes to young brokers, and you can answer this yourself or other perhaps staff of yours that you've put in the YBN, but how do you think that industry involvement is important for young brokers, and what benefits did you see yourself at the time?
For me, there's been a ton of learning. Whether that's at the Young Broker Committee level or at the board level, you're learning things about our industry that you wouldn't be exposed to otherwise. So it's been a really good personal development tool that way. I think one of the biggest impacts though is at the relationship level. People talk about this all the time, but we really are a relationship business, and being involved with things like IBAM and Young Broker Committee, you are making more connections with brokers, but also with company people and industry people that are so valuable. Having that personal connection to some of those people where you can pick up the phone and have a conversation and work through an issue together just is so valuable. Brokers for the most part have the same issues. So if I have an issue today, somebody else in this province has experienced that. And, or even outside of that, as some of the involvement with Young Broker Committee has developed national relationships as well, right? So those are relationships that I still continue to this day as well. So both at the Young Broker Committee level and the board level, you get a chance to broaden your perspective to a national perspective as well. So that's the most important thing, aside from ensuring the strength of our industry, which is a really important part of that involvement. The things that you get out of it yourself are so valuable to your career.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I'll turn the page here for a second. I know I did some background of you, of course, and I know you're no stranger to education. Completed your MBA, the K program, CIP and FCIP. How valuable was that to you? And do you think young brokers should prioritize these different insurance education programs?
Yeah, for sure. I'm a huge believer in continuing education, and I think that's one of the best ways for young brokers to not only develop themselves, but signal that they want to increase responsibility. They want to move up in the industry. That's a great way to set yourself apart, because not everyone's doing it, unfortunately. So that would be the best advice I can give on the education side, is take everything you can get. And for young brokers especially, if you are at the point in your life where you don't have kids yet and family obligations, then just try to pack it in that much faster, because it's a great time to get some education out of the way, because once kids arrive, you do have that much more pulls on your time. So, but yeah, I've got tremendous value out of the education that I've taken. I was so happy when IBAC developed that MBA program in conjunction with Laurentian. It's a completely online program. I didn't have to go on campus at all. It took me about 2 years to get through. And what I learned in that program was tremendously valuable. I apply it in our business every day. Things on the organizational behavior side, the corporate finance side especially, were all things that I took out of that MBA program that have really benefited me. So yeah, that would be my advice, is take everything you can.
Great. Yeah, you're speaking to the choir. I tried to do my CABE. I got it done just after a year being in the industry, and I'm on my second CIP course. So I'm trying to get these out of the way before I have some more responsibility.
Good for you.
So I want to go back to the start of your career, and so the question is, how did you start a career in insurance? Was it a product of being raised in Wawanesa, or did you have someone kind of guiding you that way?
Yeah, so it really is a product of being raised in Wawanesa. My dad for a long time was the regional vice president for the Prairie region for Wawanesa. So in charge of Manitoba outside of Winnipeg and Saskatchewan. So it was definitely in the family, as far as hearing about insurance and watching him go to things like IBAM convention and IBAS convention over the years. So I was lucky enough to get a job working there in the summer originally when I was in high school. So started in the mailroom, sorting mail, sending out policies, doing filing, and then started my university career and continued to work in the summers. And then I actually took 2 years at U of M. So at that point, I transitioned to the Winnipeg branch. And in that time between Prairie and Winnipeg, I moved into commercial underwriting and did a lot of renewal processing and things like that. So that was my introduction to insurance. And then when I graduated university, my opportunity at that point in time with Wawanesa was to move to Calgary, and I wasn't wanting to do that at the time. So I decided to apply at brokers, and I knew that I wanted to be in a smaller community. The 2 years in Winnipeg were great, but it sort of proved to me that I was not a city boy. So that led me to applying at the brokerages in Brandon. And the first interview call I got was from Neil, and we talked for probably 2 hours. It wasn't a traditional job interview. It was a conversation, and it was just, it was about life. It was about work. It was about, how you treat customers, things like that. It was just more philosophy based. And I walked out of there and just knew that that's where I wanted to be. So I got extremely lucky and landed in my forever home on my first tryout at university. So not many people get to do that. And so I'm very fortunate in that way.
Great stuff. So my next question is, why did you decide to stay in the industry? I know a lot of jokes are made, especially in the market today, on how people wish they weren't in this current market. But what back then really drew you to commit to this long term?
Yeah, I could just see the opportunity. We often joke in this industry about people not intending to be in insurance and sort of falling into it, right, and then staying. mine was more intentional. And, I had the benefit of growing up with it, seeing what was possible, seeing that it was a good industry full of really good people. So for me, it was just about finding the right spot to land in. So once I knew that Guild was where I wanted to be, then it just all sort of came together. It was never really a question for me of whether I would continue in the industry long term. So I'm a little bit, I'm not the typical person, that you referred to in your first part there. And there's no question that this market is challenging. It's certainly the most challenging market I've ever been a part of. I think it's just about 18 years in the brokerage now. So it is a challenge unlike any we've seen, and hopefully the market turns here shortly, because it's difficult on staff and it's difficult on customers. Customers for the most part don't understand it. So I got a bit off track there with your question.
No, not at all.
Open to the market.
That was great. So I want to ask, I know you mentioned your dad being a pretty senior role at Wawanesa. You spoke of Neil at Guild. So who was your biggest role model or mentor kind of when you started your career? And if you can remember, what was the most memorable lesson that they taught you?
Yeah, certainly both of those guys were big time mentors in my career. I unfortunately didn't get the chance to work with Neil nearly as long as I would like. He got ill and passed away within a few years of me starting here. So in that time, though, I learned a lot. And then the business transition to his brother Daryl being in charge. So Daryl and Neil had very different strengths. So you learn a lot from Daryl as well that you didn't learn from Neil. And yeah, my dad, I watched growing up, he worked extremely hard. He worked hard at, developing relationships, and I could see the payoff from some of that. So that was definitely instilled in me from an early age of the value of hard work and the value of treating people properly and developing those relationships. So I'd say those are, probably some of the people that have had the largest impact on my career.
Great. So obviously in the position you're in, I'm sure you have a ton of your own staff that you mentor, but even just through young brokers in the industry with your involvement on the IBAM board, I think you're looked at as a role model. So what advice would you give to young brokers and future leaders to really thrive in their career?
Yeah, I think it's some of the points we've touched on. It's get involved. The industry involvement piece, there's no doubt that that's had a huge impact on my success. So I would strongly encourage people to get involved, put your hand up, volunteer for that position, get involved in the Young Broker Committee or whatever. There's tons of industry groups, whether that's the Insurance Women's or the Insurance Institute. There's lots of ways to get involved in our industry. So put up your hands, start to get yourself out there and make the relationships that are going to take you to the next stage. And then it's just basic work hard and do things like education and professional development that will move you forward. So
Great. I want to ask you, what has been the biggest challenge you faced in your career? I'm sure there was a lot of them, but if there's one that was particularly memorable.
Yeah. So I would say that probably I would go back to the death of Neil. That was something that came on fairly suddenly for us. So it was an interesting point in time because Neil was actively grooming the next generation of leadership. But we weren't at the point where we were ready to take it on. So that's where Daryl, stepped into that CEO role. But Neil was responsible for some of our largest clients at the time, so we had to very quickly transition those clients. At the time, I wasn't doing much insurance. I was doing more operations in the brokerage. So I became sort of the natural one to get more involved on the insurance piece again. And so I was very quickly getting up to speed on, accounts that were the largest accounts in the brokerage, and we were trying to manage that in amongst the illness that was coming on quick, and Neil recognized that it was not going to end well, so he was actively trying to prepare me for taking over some of those accounts. So I think that's probably the greatest challenge that I've been through, is just that transition period of a year or two there, where we went from having Neil in charge and healthy to Neil's gone, and we need to figure out what this business looks like, how we continue to keep customers looked after, but also keep our staff looked after. And there's a lot of families that rely on this business for their well-being, and that's something that I take really seriously. So yeah, that's probably the biggest challenge that I can think of in my career that we had to overcome.
Yeah, great. So on the other side of that coin, a little more positive, what would you say the proudest moment or the happiest moment was in your career?
That's a tough one to pick out one moment. I think some of the proudest moments are often, I think, associated with customers, and when you see what we do impacting their life in a positive way. We've had customers that came to us, and I remember doing a full review with them, and they were incredibly underinsured, and I was nervous going back to them. I had an initial meeting to gather information, and then realized there was a problem, and went back to them and presented them with a solution to properly insure them, but it was going to more than double their premium, and take them from, I don't know, $7,000 to up over $15,000. And at the time, I was nervous to go and present that. That's not always a ton of fun to go out and tell people, number one, that they haven't been insured properly, which wasn't our fault, but it's still not great to tell them. Yeah. And then the solution is for them to spend a lot more money. But they took it very well, and they thanked me at the end of the meeting and said, we knew that we weren't insured properly, and so that part was rewarding in itself. And then about a year or two ago, I think it was 2 summers ago, a storm came through and blew down their building, and the feedback that we got from them after about how their business wouldn't have been there if we hadn't done that. And so it still makes me a little bit emotional, to be honest, just telling the story, because that's why we do what we do.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. And in my short career, I've been there too, where you're presenting a much more expensive solution. And it's nerve-wracking. It's tough to do that, but it's the right thing to do, right? And we never want to see people be in those situations where they're putting in claims, right? If it's avoidable, but when it does happen, and it was directly your solution that put them in a good spot after, yeah, I mean, that's probably the best feeling you can get as a broker.
Yeah. And what I always tell customers when I'm delivering news like that is that I'd rather have this conversation with you now than after a claim. So, I don't like delivering this news, but I would sure like it a lot less if I was telling you weren't insured properly after the claim happens. So that's what I always try to keep in mind when I'm going into those conversations.
Yeah. Great. No, that was awesome. But I want to ask you now, with the success you've had so far, educationally, just your involvement, guilds growth, everything, what motivates you today? career-wise, that is?
Yeah, so I touched on it a little bit. We've got, I think, in our entire organization, we're at about 80 people now. So that's, for the most part, 80 families that rely on this business. And, COVID has just reinforced how lucky we are to be in this industry. I can't imagine being in the shoes of some of our customers that I've watched over the past year have to shut down their business multiple times and to figure out, how they're going to tell their staff that they can't continue to pay them. So that's something that motivates me, is continuing to provide secure employment to our staff. And we do that through making our business better every day. We do it through growing our business. It's why we've been purposeful in acquiring when it made sense to us. We knew that we weren't large enough and we needed to get larger. So that was a specific plan that we put in place about 8 years ago. And we've had good luck in adding pieces to our business that have allowed us to grow in a way that, we can invest in technology and the things that I think are important to keep us viable and relevant going forward. So I'd say that's the biggest thing that's motivating me right now.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I know an article just was today or yesterday came out, the CFIB report. And I forget the number Canada-wide, but specifically in Manitoba, businesses have taken about $8.4 billion in debt, right? And you have so many companies that have not only have to lay their staff off, but bring them back just to do it again. So it's heartbreaking. But I think we're going to bounce back from that, and there'll be a ton of opportunity as soon as we get out of this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we just got to get out of it.
Yeah. So going forward, what are some of your personal goals, and whether that's just, as an individual or for the business, where do you see Guilds in the future? Is it having a bigger footprint, just offering more services? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we've been very strong on our desire to remain independent. Being a truly independent broker in the country is becoming less and less common. And that's something that's really been important to us, is maintaining that independence, maintaining our local ownership and our involvement in the business. So I think, where Guild is heading is we'll continue to look to acquire when it makes sense. We're operating under 4 different brands right now. So Guild, you've got HMS Insurance, Kenton Insurance, and then we're also Wallace Agencies. So, you'll probably see a rebrand coming to unify that brand going forward. But, we definitely see the need to continue to grow. And we see other brokers around us who want to remain independent, but don't have that succession plan in place. So those are the opportunities that have been really good ones for us to pursue, and find that partnership that, there probably is an option out there that would pay them more money. But at the end of the day, making sure that their staff are looked after and that the office isn't going to leave their community has become something that we've been able to get deals done. So I think you'll continue to see us on that path. We've been really focused on our digital game over the last few years. So selling products online, delivering that online experience to those customers that want it. I'm a big believer in the broker channel, but I also believe that if we lose somebody to a direct writer because we don't offer something online, we don't have the chance to show that customer the value of the direct channel. So that's been where we've gone with some of our online bind online products is let's keep them in the channel and then let's show them the broker value afterwards. So I think you'll continue to see us expand our presence there, expand the capabilities for customers to deal with us online through portals. We're doing a ton of texting in the last year. So that's where I see our business going, is continuing to digitize as much as possible. And I think our industry has fallen behind over the last couple of decades of where we need to be. We haven't invested in the way that we needed to. You can do your online banking in a much more convenient way than you can do anything with insurance right now. So that customer expectation is there. They want to deal that way. Some customers want to deal that way. And so that's our goal, is to provide those customers with the ability to deal that way. And every other customer, however they want to deal with us, is just fine. If you want to walk in, we've got bricks and mortar stores. If you want to call, email, text, chat online, whatever that looks like, that's what I think is going to be important for our business moving forward.
Awesome. That's all sounds really exciting. And I agree with you. I'm a big fan of independent brokerages too, which, might sound ironic since I work at Hub, where they're acquiring a lot as an organization, but specifically in the prairies, we're really a collection of family-owned brokerages, and to your point earlier, when they might get more money selling to a bigger company versus, an independently owned company, there's pros and cons, right? And I definitely see that the ones that you align with, right? The ones that really are thinking more long-term. But I've also heard stories where the principals or the partners, owners, it's just, they see the mountain ahead of them that way. So they'll take the bigger money and just ride out, right? But
yeah, for sure. And everybody gets to decide how they want to exit their business, right? And this isn't to say that those people are wrong. And
yeah,
it's certainly not to say that somebody selling to Hub is wrong. That I hope that wasn't what I was implying, because that's not what I meant at all.
No.
Keith on the phone here shortly if that's what came across. But
Yeah,
no, I think
I'll get a call right after.
Yeah, every independent business owner gets to decide their own path when they exit their business, and there's a certain set of them that feel like a business like ours is the best fit for their business. So that's been good for us.
Yeah, I know that's to me, that's always been a super interesting part of the business. I haven't been at Hub all that long, about a year now. And since I've been here, our Prairie Hub is, I believe, made 2 acquisitions, Prince Albert and Galan, so Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
But both of them were, these are family-run businesses, in some cases, 2nd or 3rd generation. And yeah, it's just cool to see how they onboard and, how they still want to be successful despite not being independent anymore. But no, I really, I hope you guys do well. And is it specifically Manitoba that you guys are in now, or is it?
Yeah, right now we're Manitoba only. So
Okay.
yeah, that's not to say that we wouldn't go outside the province. We've looked at some opportunities in Saskatchewan. They just haven't been a fit in the end for us. But yeah, we've done really well in the southwest corner of the province. That's sort of been our bread and butter and our comfort spot right now. But we would definitely expand outside of that if the right opportunity came along.
Nice, good for you guys. So, Brett, I won't take up much of your time anymore. I got one last question. It's kind of a 2-parter, and we've answered some of this. But to summarize, what areas do you see as the biggest opportunity for young brokers moving forward? And what's some advice you could give to us that we can start doing tomorrow or today? Something immediate that will really be impactful in our career.
Yeah, so I think that one of the biggest opportunities for young brokers is the demographics of our industry, and it's not unlike other industries that are very top heavy with people whose age starts with a 5 or a 6 or more. There is going to be a huge talent gap here in the next 5-10 years probably. So that means that people that want to develop themselves now to be ready to fill that gap when it opens up are going to do really well. So I think that that's the biggest thing people should be focused on is develop yourself now so that you are ready when those jobs are coming open, because there's no two ways about it. It's just math that there's going to be a lot of people that we need to replace in this industry. So, and what's one thing somebody can do today? Sign up for a course or join the Young Broker Committee. I think that those are two of the things that you can do today to have a huge impact on your career. So that would be my advice.
Perfect. And I'll just mention quickly, like when I interviewed Tina, the Hub Canadian president, we were talking about us, what you said there, prepare yourself for that talent gap. And I think for me, I'm 3 years now. March will be 3 years in the industry. So I haven't experienced this fantastic market that some of my colleagues talk about. It sounds like a pipe dream to me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's the perfect testing ground, because when we get out of this, and if you were there for that, and when that talent gap starts happening, I think we'll be really, really well positioned. So,
oh, for sure. What line of business do you do mainly?
Commercial producer.
Yeah. So, yeah, like when I talk to people who've been in this industry for 40 years, they've been through hard markets, but they've never been through one like this. And they say that they've never seen a hard market where you just literally can't find people on auction sometimes. Hard markets in the past have really been a lot more focused on pricing and huge price jumps. This hard market and the capacity crunch that we're experiencing is unlike something they've ever seen. And so I think you're absolutely right, for young brokers that are starting off in this market, and will always be able to say that they were part of this hard market when it does finally relent and we go back to something that's a little bit softer. I think that is a really good thing that's going to help them in their career to have that experience.
Yeah. 40 years from now, I'll be that old broker saying, "Oh, you guys, you have no idea.
Yeah.
Back in my time."
Back in 2020, back in 2021. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, Brett, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. You gave us great insight and great advice. I look forward to, to hopefully meeting in person one day. And I know the IBAM board is in good hands when you take over. So I just wanted to say, really, really appreciate the time and look forward to meeting sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you saying that, and it was good. Thanks for asking me to do this, and thanks for volunteering as part of the committee.
Thanks, Brett.